enough announcements. So let us get to the topic of the day. And so I want to start with saying today is about equations, but learning how to solve equations is actually all about understanding opposite processes. And so I want to start off with a little journey. And I want to say, I'm going to start with the number 5, and then I'm going to add 2. And if I add 2, I get to a certain number, 7. Say, for example, I want to undo the +2. If I want to get back to where I started with, what is the opposite process of adding 2? And I want you to put this in the chat. So everybody pop this in the chat. What is the opposite of +2? Okay, it's -2, exactly. So if we started with a 7 and we took away 2, we end up back at the beginning. Let me get that highlighted. So this is a really important idea, huh? So we started with the number and we add 2, we did that. Then we also figured out there's an opposite process to +ing 2, it's -ing 2. Let's do something similar to that, but with a different operation. Let me just move down a little bit. Say I want to go, I go 5 and I multiply by 3. What is the opposite process to multiplying by 3? You can pop it in the chat. Yes, Koketso, you're on the right track. Okay, so the opposite of dividing by 3, sorry, of timesing by 3 would be dividing by 3. So let's just see that this works. If I go 5 times 3, I get 15. If I go 15 divided by 3, I get back to the original. Okay, let's try a different one. If I said to you 5 minus 3, I'm actually going to do it in one line now. And I want to make, basically what I want to do is I want to make sure the -3 has no effect. What's the opposite of minusing 3? It's going to be +3. So another way of seeing this is to go 5 minus 3 plus 3 gives me 5. Okay, what about, let's do it in one line again. What about 5 divided by 3? What is going to be the opposite process of dividing by 3? Okay, it's going to be times by 3. 3 times by 3. Another way of writing this is to write it as like that. And what we say is that when we divide by 3 and times by 3, these two cancel out and we get back to the very beginning. We get back to 5. Now, we kind of expected that because this whole exercise is about knowing about opposite operations. And what I want to point out to you is when you use the inverse operation or the opposite operation, if you use the correct inverse, it basically has no effect overall. So if you've got an original operation and you then use the inverse, you're back to where you started. It doesn't have any overall effect. Okay, that's going to be an important idea for today. The other idea for today that I want to point out is when we solve an equation. So say, for example, an equation is just an algebraic expression knitted together with an equal sign with another expression. So that would be a very simple algebraic equation. And what we would say, normally the command term or the word would say, solve for the value of x that makes this equation true. Now, can you tell me just by looking at it what the answer would be? Just using kind of your logic and common sense. Pop it in the chat for today. I'm going to ask for audio in a moment, but for now, it's just short little quick ones. Okay. So I'm looking at the chat, and what I'm seeing is I'm seeing that a lot of students are saying that it is x is 3. And that makes a lot of sense because 3 plus 7 gives me 10, which means the answer must be x is 3. Now, what today's lesson is going to be all about is going, look, not all equations are as simple as just being able to see the answer. Sometimes we need a method or a process. And I want to ask you something. Look at this plus 7. What is the opposite operation to plus 7? What undoes plus 7? It's minus 7. So what we do with equations, the main method we use is we say, look, if I think of something that will undo the plus 7, I'm going to take away 7 on the one side. But the problem is an equation is an equal statement. So if it's like a scale, if I take away 7 from one side, then I have unbalanced the whole thing. The one side is now going to be unbalanced. So whenever I do a step in an equation, I always have to do the same thing to both sides. So when I started, x plus 7 was 10, and I took away 7 from both sides. Who would like to tell me why I chose to take away 7? I'd love to have an audible answer now. So Kaklego, maybe you could, will you be willing to help us? Or Tando, would you be able to help us? Why do you think I chose to take away 7?
So because on with x, they just gave us x plus 7.
You want to go ahead,
equals
Tando, or
10.
Fareed? Okay.
Hello, sir.
Anyone? Fareed, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Can you
Why
hear
did
me?
I choose to take away 7?
Because
Okay, yeah.
because when you
All
take
right,
away
so I
7,
think you must be having some audio issues, but basically, the reason I chose to take away 7, it was the opposite of plus 7. And so the overall effect of this, plus 7 minus 7, that has no overall effect. And we get left with the answer that x is 10 minus 7, which is 3. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move into the work, but the main idea today is going to involve these two things. What is the opposite process
I was about to
for a
answer a
particular
question. You didn't hear
operation?
me. Like
And
there's
always
audio
ensuring,
issues.
in order to keep an equation balanced, we do the same thing to both sides. So let's get started.
Starts crying.
In fact, let's start with just a simple question. I want you to write down an equation that describes the statement. A number multiplied by 10 is 80. I want you to write that down as an equation if you can. So a number multiplied by 10 is 80. If you can, put your answer in the chat. There we go. So a number will be a variable. So we have a choice. Normally with variables, we'll use a letter. So I'm just going to use the letter A. But I could have used X or Y. A number multiplied by 10 equals 80. So that is step 1. Now, I want to know, does anybody know the answer to this straight away without doing any working out? All right. So if you look at that, put in the chat, put what your answer is. Okay. So I see many students are saying the answer is A equals 8. And you're completely right. Perfect. However, because I'm preparing you for harder equations, I want to know if I was to use a method where I wanted to get only only got the A by itself, and I wanted to focus on the opposite of timesing by 10. What is the opposite of timesing by 10? Put that in the chat. Okay. So be careful here because it's not plus 10, it's times by 10. Who would love to? I'd love to hear a student's voice if we're able. Could you come on? Who's able to explain to us? Kanya Sile. I'm going to try and unmute you. Just go to the bottom and try and unmute.
So I think it's divided by 10.
Kanya Sile, can you unmute? Otherwise, Tatenda, are you able to unmute?
So can you hear me?
Kanya Sile, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello,
Can.
sir.
Okay. I don't know. We must be having a little issue with mutes or something today.
Hello, sir.
Must be something going on with the audio. Okay. We both have audio problems. Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. Maybe there's a setting. Not a problem. We'll just roll with it. So the opposite, the opposite of timesing by 10 is going to be divide by 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides by 10. Now, how will I divide by 10? All I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a divide by 10 on both sides. And what we say is the divide by 10 and the times by 10 cancel each other out. And so all I'm left with on this side is A equals. And then on this side, what is 80 divided by 10? It's just going to be 8.
80.
So the method I'm going to teach you to solve equations is, okay, this is the step. Whenever we solve an equation, we want to isolate the variable. Now, isolate means to be by itself. So in this question, the variable was A. And so we tried to isolate this. Then second step was to use the opposite operation, or use the inverse operation on both sides. So I'm going to practice that again and again today. Okay. So let's, oh, something has got a bit stuck there. Let me see if I can quickly get rid of that for a second. Oh. Sorry, guys. Today seems to be one of those days where we have a few technical glitches as we are going. But luckily, I'll just drag some things around and we'll be good to go. That isn't. Bring that down. Oh, this keeps on following me. Okay, maybe we can just move it. We can just ignore the funny writing above there. Okay, so what I want everyone to do is I want you to translate each of these statements into an equation. So add 83 to a number and the answer is 100. So I want you to write that as an equation for me. And then I also want you to divide a number by 5 and the answer is 4. So step 1 is I want you to write this as an equation. And then step 2 is we're going to use a method to solve an equation. So pop your answers in the chat when you have a moment. So add 83 to a number. So we can use X or we can use, so we're adding 83 to a number and the answer is 100. Yeah. What about the second one? So divide a number. Let me choose the letter Y just to be different. Divide a number by 5 and the answer is 4. Okay. Now, everyone, what I want you to do is I want you to try and use my method where you have one step of working. And what we're going to do is I want you to think about, in order for me to solve equation 2.2, I really want to get this X by itself. Now, some of you will see the answer straight away. I get that. But I want you to think, if you're using the method I'm showing you today, what you need to think about is what is the opposite of plus 83? And I want you to write the question again And next to the plus 83, I want you to write the opposite to that. But then when you do that on the one side, in order to keep the equation balanced, when you started this, they were equal. You need to do it to both sides to keep it balanced. Okay, so I want you to do that. And then I want to see, can you do it for 2.3? What would the correct way to do 2.3 be? Okay, I'll give you a moment to do that. And what you should find is we take away 83 from both sides. And so what is the effect of adding 83 and taking 83 away? That part gets knocked out. And you're left with what is 100 minus 83? It's just going to be 17. And some of you may have seen that answer early on, but we're going to get x is 17. So what I would like to see in the chat, give me a thumbs up if you feel like you're getting this method of solving equations so far. Give a thumbs down if you're still a little bit shaky. Because this method works for every equation in existence. Okay, so I think if you just keep practicing it, we'll get there, but we need a bit more practice. Okay, it's a bit of a mixture. Let's try the next one. Because I think if we keep practicing this, you'll see where we get there. Okay, divide a number by 5. Now, in this question, if I want to solve the equation, the thing that is causing me a bit of problems is this divide by 5. If this divide by 5 wasn't here and the y was all by itself, then I would have my answer. So in the chat, what is the opposite of divide by 5? So type in the chat, what's the opposite of divide by 5? It's going to be, let's look at the chat. Tando says it's time by 5. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this side by 5, and I'm also going to multiply that side by 5. So what I've done is I've used the inverse process of dividing by 5, or the opposite. But I don't just do it to one side, I do it to both sides, because otherwise I would unbalance the equality. So what is 5 over 5? It's just going to be 1. And then I've got my lovely lonely y all by itself. What is 4 times 5? It's going to be 20. And if we look back at that original equation, 20 divided by 5 will give me 4. Okay. Let's do these two. Can you write these as equations as step 1? And as step 2, can you solve using the method that you've seen so far? And once you've got your answer, I want you to put that in the chat. So first put your equation, like first step equation, and then second step answer. And then I want to see that in the chat. So multiply a number by 4. So now multiply a number by 4 in algebra. I could also write a by 4. Couldn't I write it as 4a? Multiply a number by 4. I could write that as 4a. And that equals 20. So if you think back to the last lessons we were doing, you can write 4 times a as just 4a. There's nothing wrong with that. And now, what is the opposite of multiplying by 4? It's going to be to divide by 4. So I do it to both sides. 4 over 4 is 1. And my final answer is going to be that a is 5. Okay, so let's try and do this one over here. Twice a number is 100. And how would I write twice a number? So I know it's going to be equal 100 on the side. So it's not going to be 10 squared. Twice a number is going to be double or 2 times. So we would say 2 times, let's say 2 times b, or we could also write it as 2b equals 100. And then I want you to think, what is the opposite of multiplying by 2? So what is the opposite of multiplying by 2? And that's what we need to do to both sides. Okay, so the opposite of multiplying by 2 is not minus 2. Okay, it's division, yes. But when I divide, I can't just do it to the one side. I need to do it to both sides so that the equality is kept the same. Now, what's my final answer going to be?
Hello?
So what is it's going to be, so 2 over 2 is the same as 1. B is 100 over 2, which means B is 50. Okay, so I know this is new to a lot of you, but really the whole of equations is 2 things. What is the opposite process to something that you see here? And are you doing it to both sides of the equation? Okay, so can it be 10 squared? It can't be 10 squared. And the reason it can't be 10 squared is what I do is when I start, I go 2 times b. And so I have to then, when I go 2 times b to start, the opposite process is to divide by 2. Okay. Let's do another one, which is a little bit sneakier. So I want you to look at these 5 equations. And each of these equations, I want you to use the inverse operation to help you find the answer. So there's going to be a step of working in between. I will do the first one to show you what I mean. In the first equation, I need to solve for a minus 1 is 7. So I'm looking for a value of a that makes that true. The operation that is getting in the way, that's stopping me from getting a, is the minus 1. So I ask myself, what is the opposite of minus 1? It's plus 1. So I rewrite my equation and I write a plus 1 next to the minus 1. But I don't stop there. If I stop there, I'd be wrong. I need to add 1 to both sides. Otherwise, I've unbalanced my equation. So what's my final answer going to be? Well, I know minus 1 plus 1 is nothing. So my final answer will be 8. Okay, I want you to do the next 4 questions. I'm going to keep quiet now. And for the next 4 minutes, you guys are going to figure this out and do it. You can pop your answers in the chat, and then I will go through it with you. Okay, but I want you to use the steps.
Let's do this, guys. Let's go. We can do it. Let's go, guys.
It's looking good, guys. It's looking good. It's looking good. Oh, Yolanda, you're saying students can hear you. There's obviously something going on with the audio. Okay. Keep those answers coming, guys. It's looking great. So what I'm going to do, Yolanda, is I'm going to just leave the Zoom and come back when we do the brain break, maybe that'd be the way to do it. Okay, looking good, guys, looking good. All right.
You guys are doing amazingly well.
Okay, so I'm going to give about another minute, and then I'm going to give you the answers, and then we're going to have our little brain break. There we go, there we go. Fantastic. Okay, so in the second one, b plus 2 is 12. All I'm going to do in that one is I'm going to take away 2 from both sides. And when I take away 2, I did that because I know what's the opposite of plus 2. It's minus 2. And then I know plus 2 minus 2 is nothing. And so my final answer will be 10. Then in the third one, 2 times c is 14. In this one, I'm going to actually divide both sides by 2. And why did I divide both sides by 2? Because I wanted to deal with this 2 over here. When I do that, 2 over 2 is 1. And so c is 14 over 2. And so c would be 7. Okay, now for 4, what do we have to do for 4? For 4, well, we have to, it's the plus 4 that we need to do the opposite. So we go d plus 4 minus 4 on this one, and on this side we go minus 4. And so the effect of that is going to be d is 10. So doesn't it also count on the rule of science? Well, it counts on the fact that if you have an equation and you do the same thing to the both sides, that equation will still be equal. And so that's why I always do the same thing. If 2 things are equal on a scale and you add the same thing to both sides, they're still equal. So that's the one principle. The other principle I'm using is just that I always choose to add or subtract or multiply in order to get the variable by itself. Okay, so that's the idea. So when I look at 5, I look at it and I go, I'd really like to get the e by itself. How do I do that? I know I'm going to do something to both sides. That something is going to have to get rid of the minus 2. And so what I do is I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So I go e minus 2, and then I go plus 2. But now because I've done it on the one side, I have to do it on the other side. The good news for me is that I've deliberately knocked out the minus 2. Basically, minus 2 plus 2 has no effect. And now I'm left with a lonely e. But the good news is on the other side, I've got 5 plus 2, which is 7. So let's just do a quick little vote. Thumbs up if you feel like you're getting this method. Thumbs down if you still feel a bit like, Sharon, it's fine if you do them a little differently, as long as you are understanding the basic principle. Okay. You'll see that as long as you're in the right answer, I don't mind what method you use, but we'll just keep going. All right. So guys, what I'm going to ask is I'm going to ask Yolanda and Nicole to quickly do the stretching. We're going to stand up and do a little break. I want you to stand up and stretch. And then I want everyone else, while you're doing that, I'm going to quickly leave and then come back, and hopefully the audio will be better. So I'm making Yolanda or Nicole, I'm going to make Nicole the host.
Let's go, everyone. Let's do this. Ooh, stretch wherever you are. It's good for you. Guys, I have flu, as you can hear. I'm not sure if you can hear me, and my background is so noisy. So sorry to everybody. But stretch. I can see you, Lisa. Maggie, I can see you. Oh, thank you, Amache. Oh, It was full on my day, but now because of my flu, I don't really feel well. So sorry, guys. But I'm
I
still
think the stretching's
with all of you.
the stretching is gonna help
Can
you feel
anyone hear
better,
me?
Yolanda.
Yeah, it does help me feel better. Oh, teacher
Guys,
Peter.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, that's such good news. I feel so much more together now that everyone, I can hear you. Come on. Okay, fantastic. Who knows what was going on there? Fakazile, go ahead. What is your question? So here's the brain break. I would love my students to get going on the brain break. And then Fakazile, if you can unmute, I'm trying to unmute you. If you
Guys, remember that there's an unmute button there. It will pop up in your screen. So just click on it there, okay? Click on that button that you see on your screen so you can talk to us.
Okay. Well, while that's happening, see if you can solve the brain break. That would be awesome. So I do see that Lisa has said that it's 20 for the red rose here, or the red flower. What is the blue one going to be? I think it's going to be 5, based on what I'm seeing. Yes, Jabulile. I agree with you. So now, what is the yellow flower going to be? I think each of them has to be 1, which together makes them 2. Now be careful because this is going to be a 1, because there's 2 flowers there. So what is my final answer going to be? And I would love for a student to tell us if they are feeling, put your hand up and tell us your answer. Amakle, let's hear your voice there. I've unmuted you, or at least I've tried to. Can you hear me, Amakle? Can you see it? Amakle,
Sir.
can you? Hi.
Sir,
Yes.
so you said by 10 times 5, it's 50. Then you said plus 1, it's 51.
Okay, but do you agree that the red thing is 20, not 10?
Oh, so sir, it's going to be 101.
Yes. Yes. It's going to
Well
be
done, Go. Well done.
101. Well done. Okay. All right. Don't worry, Amakle, if you can't unmute. Today, things are just, the sound gremlins are everywhere. Okay, everyone, you've done very nicely. Let's get back to our equations. And let me just kind of do a few examples again to explain kind of this method. And then, again, there are other ways of doing this, right? It's not the only way of doing it, but I think it's a very reliable way of doing it. So, for example, when we look at 11 to 15, sometimes what we might have to do, well, in fact, let's not do those ones. Let's go to an old exam question. Let's go to that. So if I go to something like this, I would like you guys to try and solve number 1, number 3, number 6, and then number 8. So, and what I want you to do is that I want you to try and focus on what the opposite process is to the number or the operation near the variable. Okay.
Can we have it a little bit zoom out, please?
We can, yeah. How's that?
Yes, I think that's a little bit still small, but we can see, right? Can you see? Like, can you see?
How's that?
I think that's okay. That's okay. We're cool now. Thank you.
Okay, let's do it. So we're doing the ones with red ticks next to them. Over to you guys. Okay, Sivanati, I see your answer. I think you're on the right track.
Let's do this, guys. We can do it.
You can do it. Let's do it. Okay, Jabalila, I think we're on the right track. Yep. Okay, so from what I can see in the chat, lots of people think that the first one is 12. What about the next one? Okay, I see a question. Sebongo Kuhle. What's your question? Can you unmute Sebongo Kuhle? Or Scarlett, I'll also try and unmute you if you're able to.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, how's it going?
Okay, good. Okay, sir, I'm doing 6 and 8.
Yeah, are you able to do question 8, or do you want to talk about that?
Okay. I just wrote my answer.
So I tell you what, could you help me maybe with question 6 first?
Okay.
What did you do in question 6?
So for question 6, I first said 40 plus 15,
Yes.
and then that gives us 55.
Okay, no, but hold on. You went plus 15, but did you do plus
Yeah.
15 again?
No.
Because remember, if you do it to, are you basically thinking of just bringing it to the other side? Is that kind of in your head, kind of what you're thinking about?
Yeah.
Aha. It's not wrong to say that. Although I really like it if students can see why it works. So essentially what happens is your plus 15 just appears because the minus 15 and plus 15 cancel out. Can you see that?
Yes,
So,
sir.
all right. So as long as you can see why we get to where you get to, perfect. Okay. What's your final answer?
55.
Perfect. Okay. What about
done,
number?
Okay, well done.
Well done. So, but now what about 8? How do you deal with the negative x? Have you got any ideas for that?
I use the same method.
Okay, so explain to me.
I still went 14 plus 5. No, I didn't do that. So I don't know how to explain it, but my final answer, I don't really think it's like that.
Okay. Can
We
I?
are with you, Sbongi. We are with you. We are with
Yes.
you. Try it. Give it a try. Go. I trust and believe in you. Just tell us what you did.
Okay, so like I worked it out in my head, like the
Okay.
others. So what I thought is going back 5 times. So 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9.
Okay. So you did it in your head. Can I?
Yes.
Let me show you a method that's quite sneaky with this one.
Okay.
If I had to ask you, what is the opposite of minusing x? what do you think the opposite of minusing x is? Any ideas? Or maybe it's plus x, exactly. So what I'm going to do, and not everyone will agree with this because there's other ways, is I'm going to say, I'm going to add a plus x to both sides. Now, what I would love to hear from someone is, why did I go plus x on both sides? Lesedi, could you help me with explaining why I went plus x on both sides? So Lesedi, if you can unmute, otherwise, Ayanda, who can help me? Why did I decide to go plus x on both sides? Let's have a look. Who is willing to give it a go? So the reason I decided, yes, who's speaking?
Ayanda.
Ayanda, why do you think I decided to go plus x?
So because for it to be cancelled out, you have to, I think, because you have to, for it
Yes.
to be staying on itself, I think.
You're on the right track. So the reason I went plus x is I really didn't want to deal with the negative x like it was. And so one way of moving it around is simply to go, what's the opposite of minus x? It's plus x. So this
Yes.
cancels it out on this side, but lucky for me, it reappears on this side. So it's the inverse,
Yes.
exactly. So now I want to ask you, is it easier to solve this question? 14 equals 5 plus x, is that easier?
Yes, sir. So with me, so the way I did it, sir, we do it like when we don't like write it down out like the way you did. So we'll just say to put the other way. So it will be negative x.
Yeah.
It will be by itself, and put the 14 to the other side. Because since the 14 is already a plus,
Yes.
and then you take it to the other
do it
side.
in one step like that. So you move the 5 across and it becomes the negative, and you move the negative x across and it becomes a positive. Is that what you're saying?
No, so I'm saying that like with so it's 14 minus x, and then you want to have negative x by itself equals to 5 minus
Okay.
14, then it'll be negative x equals to negative, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so the good news is we're all going to get the same answer in the end. So let's just get the answer, but I totally see where you're going. I'm just going to choose to stay with the method I've been focusing on so far today. And that is to say, well, what's the opposite of plus 5? It's just minus 5. And so my final answer is just going to be 14 minus 5 is x, or 9 is equal to x.
Well done,
Okay.
and well done.
So all I was doing, if I have to sum up today's lesson, when solving equations, we always use the opposite process. We need more practice at this, and we have time for one more set. But I really want to emphasize this idea that as long as you do the same thing to both sides, you will get to the final answer. So let's just try and finish with these 4 equations for today. So this is it. And I want you to think, what is the opposite operation? And if I do it to both sides, what will my final answer be? And then we're going to call it a day for today, because the next lesson, I'm going to show you in more detail how this method can apply to more difficult questions. Okay. Yes, it is. We must do our polls. Exactly. Thank you, Kanyesile. We're just going to do these 4 questions here, and then we'll finish for today. Kanyesile, do you want to ask a question? No. Okay. So in this first one, I think 3x means 3 times x. And so the opposite of timesing by 3 is just to divide by 3. Yes, I'd love for someone to answer the question. If you raise your hand, that'd be awesome. Okay. Tatenda and Sanalegwenya. let's go to you guys. I've tried to unmute. Tatenda, do you want to give me the answer for the first one?
Sir, I feel like we say 3 divided by 3 will be 1.
Yeah. And what is x going to be then? So 3 over 3 is 1. So that cancels out. But what's 6 over 3? Okay, it's going to be 2, huh?
2. Yes, 2.
Perfect. All right. Now the next one, guys, because we're running out of time, I'm going to do these last 2 and then we'll leave the fourth one for the next lesson. What is the opposite? In fact, I'm just going to do one more and then we'll call it a day for today. I think I'm squeezing in too much. What is the opposite of multiplying by 6? So 6 times x is what's happening. The opposite of timesing by 6 is to divide by 6. I then 6 over 6 is 1, so I get left with 1x. And what's 24 over 6? It's 4. Okay. Because in the end, 6 times 4 gives you 24. Okay, everyone. So that is the end of our first lesson on equations. We continue in the next lesson. I would love for Yolanda to put the poll out to you guys now. And then we'll finish off with the poll. And we will meet again on Wednesday. Malusi's asking, sir, when are we doing geometry? Because you have a test next week. Geometry is coming up in the next term. And so hang in there, Malusi, or look at the website where you'll find a few more old recordings from other grades that might be helpful. Okay.